Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to tackle something pretty important for anyone involved in workplace safety or, risk management. How OSHA standards actually get created and maybe more importantly, how they get changed over time.
Yeah, it's fundamental stuff.
Think of this as, well, a look under the hood, really.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to give you some practical knowledge about how you can understand and maybe even influence these OSHA standards.
Exactly. And we're drawing this straight from the source, OSHA's own regulations, specifically 1910.3.
Right. So it's not just theory, it's the actual process.
And for safety pros listening, knowing this isn't just about checking boxes for compliance, it's about having the tools to maybe help shape a safer work environment. It empowers you, really.
Okay, so let's jump into the first big way things can change. How can a standard actually be, modified or even created from scratch?
Well, the first mechanism, laid out in 1910.3a, might actually surprise some people with its directness.
Yeah, it says basically any interested person can petition OSHA. That means you, listening right now, could petition to create a standard, change one, or even get rid of one you think is outdated.
It's quite accessible, isn't it? OSHA really provides that direct path for input. So if you've spotted a hazard or a gap in the rules,
you can formally propose something.
But, and this is key, it can't just be a vague idea. A good petition needs some specific things.
Right. First off, you need the actual wording. Like, what exactly do you want the rule to say? You almost have to write it out for them. Be precise.
And then you've got to detail what you think will happen if they make the change. What's the anticipated effect?
Better safety outcomes, hopefully. Fewer injuries. What are the pluses? Maybe any challenges, too?
Exactly. It shows you've thought through the real-world consequences. OSHA needs to see that practical consideration.
And probably the most critical part, you need to explain why. What's the reason for this change?
Yeah, the rationale. You need solid backing. Think data, accident reports, maybe industry best practices that aren't reflected yet. Strong evidence is crucial.
So if you've ever thought, there really should be an OSHA rule about this specific thing, this petition process is your avenue.
It really is. Now, that leads us into how OSHA got its standards rolling in the first place. Section 1910.3b talks about something called national consensus standards.
Yeah. So early on, Congress basically pointed OSHA towards existing standards from certain groups, right?
Precisely. They specifically recognized organizations like the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, and the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA.
So way back in 1971 when OSHA started, a lot of the initial safety standards were just adopted straight from ANSI and NFPA documents.
It was a way to get a baseline set of rules established pretty quickly, which made sense.
Build a foundation?
Exactly. But what's also interesting in the regulation is that it laid out a process. There was a window, and it actually closed back on February 1st, 1973. For other organizations out there, groups that felt they also produced national consensus standards to basically apply for recognition from the Assistant Secretary of Labor.
So it wasn't just locked into those first two forever?
No, there was a mechanism. And if an organization submitted their stuff,
OSHA had a formal procedure.
Yep. They'd publish a notice about it in the Federal Register, kind of like putting it out there for public view.
Okay, makes sense. Transparency.
And then other interested parties, maybe unions, companies, other safety groups, could send in their thoughts. Written data, views, arguments. Basically weighing in on whether that organization's standards really met the definition of a national consensus standard.
So there was a chance for feedback and scrutiny before OSHA officially recognized another standard-setting body.
Right. It ensured that the term national consensus standard had some teeth to it, beyond just those initial two groups Congress named.
Okay, so wrapping this up a bit, we've seen two key things here. First, individuals like safety professionals have a direct way to petition for changes.
A very proactive route.
And second, we understand how OSHA initially built its rulebook, heavily relying on these established national consensus standards, particularly from ANSI and NFPA, but with a process to recognize others too.
And knowing these mechanisms, well, it's just really valuable for safety professionals and risk managers. It helps you understand why things are the way they are and maybe see where there are opportunities to engage.
And we should mention this deep dive is brought to you by Safety One Source. They focus on supporting safety professionals, risk managers, and really anyone looking to boost their safety knowledge.
Yeah, definitely relevant to our listeners today.
So thinking about this whole framework we just discussed, maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Given these processes, what chances do you see for professionals like yourself to actually get involved in shaping the safety regulations that affect your specific industry?
How could you use this knowledge proactively?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.